Hello, everyone, and greetings from the Slash studio here in Helsinki. I am Eva, the head of program at Slash, and I am thrilled to kick off this session with one of my personal role models, Mathilde Collin, the founder and CEO of Front. Today, Mathilde is joined by another great founder and CEO of Welcome to the Jungle, Jeremy Cleda. Mathilde and Jeremy will dive deeper into what makes organizations resilient and what you, as a founder and an employee, can do to help build resilience into your company. We already have Mathilde and Jeremy on the call with us, but before passing the baton to them, let me just go through some very quick practicalities of the session. We have some exciting 45 minutes ahead of us. The fireside will last about 25 minutes, after which Mathilde and Jeremy will be taking questions from the audience. So make sure to use the Q&A feature right at the bottom of the screen to leave your questions, and this way Mathilde and Jeremy can spot them easier. I am sure there are a lot of interesting insights to be taken from this session, so I recommend you to continue discussions via Twitter using the hashtag #NoteBySlash. And finally, the session is live streamed on YouTube, so if you have some friends who would like to tune in, please free to invite them. This is it from my side, and now enjoy the session, and Mathilde, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. So I'm the CEO and the co-founder of Front, and one of the things that I've loved doing in the past few years have been to share my journey and all the things that I've learned. So I was super happy to be asked by the Slash team to talk about what I've learned during this really challenging year. But my experience is just one perspective, and so I thought it'd be very valuable to bring someone else along. So I've invited Jeremy, who is the co-founder and CEO of Welcome to the Jungle, to discuss the topic of resiliency with me. Welcome to the Jungle is great because it has probably a pulse on all the best work cultures and career opportunities in Europe. So I'm really looking forward to Jeremy's insights, not just from running his own company, but also from what he's been seeing in the ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So resiliency is an interesting topic. So for startups, my favorite book is The Hard Things About Hard Things. So as a founder, I think if you ask anyone, everyone would agree that building a company and running a company is super hard. But this year, I feel like it's been even harder because of things that were completely outside of our control, like COVID, the shift to remote work, economic turmoil. In the US, we've had other challenging things like civil unrest and wildfires. But what happened this year is that it's not just hard for founders. And so founders are not the only ones that need to be resilient. Employees as well, they're anxious. They can have super challenging situations at home. Jeremy will tell us more about why he's in his car right now. People can be scared of losing their jobs. And so everyone in your team needs to be resilient too. The good news is, and this is one of the things that makes me excited about this session, is that resilience is a muscle that you can train on yourself and on your company. And before we jump, so the core of the session will be for us to be able to share very concrete examples of things that you can do at a personal level or at a company level to make sure that through tough times, your company and yourself are still doing well. But before we start, Jeremy and I will just share one experience each of when we first learned to be resilient, or just like a moment that mattered to us. And I'll start by telling you a story, which is I started Front in 2014. And at the end of 2016, I started with my co-founder, Laurent. End of 2016, my co-founder told me that he was diagnosed with cancer, and that he had to go through many cycles of chemo, and then started probably the worst time of my life, because I was trying to be here for him. I was trying to be here for the company. And so I was spending half my time at the hospital, half of my time at the office, pretending that everything was going well, whereas I was super sad, super scared. And I started being very anxious. And so waking up in the morning and truly not being able to go back to work. And at this time, I had to personally learn how to be resilient. And And I think this will be the theme of the presentation, but there is not just one thing that I did to get better. It's a lot of small things that will add up to make you feel better. So for me, it was things like started meditation every morning, started seeing a therapist, reading about what was happening to me, starting a new diet so that, I would eat healthy, deleting apps on my phone so that I would not wake up and look at my phone and specifically work apps and then go back to bed and check if I have a few emails. So I started all these things. And the company learned to be resilient as well, because with a CTO and my co-founder who was out at the hospital, and a CEO who was also out because she was feeling so anxious that she couldn't go to work, they had to step up. And I'll talk more about this. But so that was in 2016. That's the first time I really learned how to be resilient. And I'm curious, Jeremy, I think in your case, you had to shut down Welcome to the Jungle when COVID lockdown started. And I'm curious to understand what it was like for you personally during this challenging time.
Yeah, sure. Well, hi everyone. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mathilde, for the invitation. It's true that it's a very important topic, especially right now. And in fact, for us, I think when you started a company, resilience is an everyday task and an everyday objective if you want to pursue this project like this. And it's true, for example, for us, 2020 was a year in which you needed to show some resilience. And it's very different, when you're a founder, I think, when you need resilience all the time, when at this moment, you understand that, of course, you personally need to be resilient, but in fact, all the company needs to be, as a, let's say, a corporate level, but everyone within the company. And for us, it was quite important a few months ago, because when the COVID-19 crisis happened, especially in Europe, when everything shut down, but I think it was all over the world, we do a very particular job because, just in a nutshell, what we do is that we send people within companies in their offices, to do photos, to do editorial content, to do videos, and well, everything just shut down in one night. We didn't have the possibility to do our job, and so in like 12 or 24 hours, we were asked to do just something very different, which was quite complicated. And here we needed to understand what resilience really was when you have to completely do a different business overnight. And what we understood there, and I think it took some months for us to understand it, and is that first, you need to be absolutely transparent about the fact that it's going to take some sacrifices. At the beginning, I think you basically said it's going to be okay, everything's going to work out, and you started to minimize the efforts, the sacrifices you're going to do. But in fact, sacrifices are going to be made, especially for those who are going to change jobs overnight. And I think we understood at the time that if you're okay with sharing this kind of news right away, after that, it helps people to be more resilient and to have a better long-term vision. And most important, I think resilience, but maybe I am a bit biased by what I do at Welcome to the Jungle, but is strictly linked with your corporate culture and with your long-term vision. Because people often say that culture is what stays when you leave the room as a founder, and I think it's quite true. And I think during those times of crisis, your culture and your long-term vision is the only thing that stays when there is a crisis everywhere. And we show that resilience too is about the how strong and how precise and how transparent your vision and your long-term vision is in the company, because it's something that people can relate and they can see how resilient it is, and so they can also become more resilient with it. And we witness at Welcome to the Jungle that the more engaged, the more precise you are on telling people, well, we are still going to that direction. Maybe it will be a bit different right now, but still, this is the direction we want to take. And it helps everyone, including me, of course, be much more okay with the situation we are actually living in.
Yeah, well, Jeremy, this is an excellent transition because one of the things that we want to cover today is the cultural foundations that builds resilience.
Exactly.
So specifically, we'll talk about 4 tools that both of us have used that we think can make a difference in these times: transparency, wellness, low ego, and impact. And so the goal is one, to tell you what it means, and two, to give you very concrete examples of what both companies have done in each of these categories. So transparency, no one should question how the business is really doing, how they're performing. There is something that I tell every time. Transparency is one of our values at Front, and so every time a new hire joins Front, they have a presentation called All About Front. I tell them all about the history of Front. I share our values and I explain what transparency means. And one thing that I like to say is transparency is not good in itself. In my opinion, there is good transparency and bad transparency. So transparency is not about just sharing everything and anything. And the way I make the difference is that good transparency will help build trust, will help answer questions, and bad transparency will just raise more questions than it will answer questions. And so, for example, bad transparency is when information is about an individual, about, I don't know, salary termination, or when it's a distraction from daily work, then we usually don't share it. But transparency has been something that we've been living since the beginning of Front. And here are very concrete things that we do that were useful before, but we've noticed have been even more useful in a context where people absolutely need to trust you, to trust your company, to feel part of the journey, because as Jeremy said, when everything else falls apart, then that needs to remain. So concrete examples are every Monday morning at 9 a.m. in SF, 6 p.m. in Paris, we hold a all hands meeting. And what we do is we share all our metrics. So what's our revenue? How are we doing in marketing, in hiring, in product? And so the team always know where we stand in respect to our goals. If you're interested about this topic, on Medium, I wrote a full blog post with a template of all hands that you can just use if you want to implement it. The second thing we do is everyone's calendars are public. So, if you're working at Front, you can just click on my calendar and you can see what I'm doing all day. So no one is questioning how people are spending their time. And we found that to be, again, helping with trust. We have board meetings every quarter. At the end of every board meeting, I send a board deck. And then during the following all hands, I share feedback with the team and I tell them, this is what the board think we're doing really well. This is what they think we should focus on because we could do better. And same thing, if they see what the board is seeing, then they feel like we're not hiding anything. And radical candor is something I'm really big on. I believe that it's one of the only ways to prevent politics from happening as companies are scaling. And so everyone is trained on radical candor. One tip that I can give you, a lot of people will come to me and say, well, this person is annoying because they did X, Y, Z or whatever. And I tell them, did you tell the person? And usually they tell me, no, I didn't tell the person because, it's the boss of my boss or my boss, whatever. And I tell them, well, next one-on-one, so maybe in 2 weeks, please make sure that you've told this person. And so now the person is forced to share the feedback. And I think a lot of people are scared of sharing feedback, but the moment you do it once, then it's a muscle you can train, like resilience. And it's very valuable for the future. So these are just, some examples of things that we do at Front. Jeremy, I think you invited neuroscientists into Welcome to the Jungle to assess the culture. And so I'm curious to know more about this initiative, and I'm curious to know more about the results, good and bad, that you shared with your team.
Yeah, sure. Well, on this transparency topic, in fact, we do a lot of things, just like you, all hands. Someone was asking how many people are attending your all hands, Mathilde. Maybe we can answer it right now.
180.
180, so it's quite a lot. We do the same, around 130 people right now. Same calendars, decks, and so on. We are not that good on the radical candor thing. Maybe French culture are preventing us from doing that at 100%, maybe. Sure. we did something quite interesting. Maybe it's more complicated to replicate this kind of stuff, but a bit more than 1 year ago, because we were testing a new way of working, and maybe we can discuss this a bit later. We invited a consulting firm in Paris, because we are based in Paris right now, and we asked neuroscientists to, in a way, join the company and to see how things were evolving, or our new organization was working. And so we had regular reports and regular meetings to see, to understand what the impact was on people, on the organization, on the performance of the company, because, well, we were shifting for a new way of working. And it was very interesting because we had, external people making us better understand how the company was doing. And it's very linked with transparency, because we were asking our team to take some time, because it was qualitative meetings. So, for example, we had 30 people within the company that was every week talking to these external people and saying, well, things are happening like this, why it's good for me, why it's not that good for me, and so on. And of course, really regular surveys and stuff like this. And in the end, we shared all this initiative with all the team to make them understand why we did some things and why we didn't do other things. And it was quite interesting, because I think one of the most complicated things when you're in a company is that when you don't understand why decisions are made. And here we try to really be transparent about why we chose to do things the way we do things, how people help us, take those decisions, and in the end, what was decided and what we decided to do. And in fact, we started that in June 2019. So yes, a bit more than a year ago. It was just for 6 months. And well, today we've decided to do that like permanently, because we've seen that having external people helping us on this and sharing the vision and sharing the studies really help everyone be on board and understand why they are here and why we work the way we work.
And do you have an example of something that they shared was not working well?
Yeah, sure. I think we'll talk about it a bit later, but we decided first to do that because we shifted from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week. So it was very intense change, as you can imagine, 20% less time for work every week. And for example, at the very beginning, it was very complicated for everyone to choose the day you're not going to work. And it took like just 1 week to understand that with this kind of organization, we will not be able just to book a meeting with 3 or 4 people. It will last like 2 months to find a date. So we had the ability to quickly change everything and the way we were organizing ourselves, to change that. We also see that with this kind of organization, you can't spend time doing things that don't have value for you because you have 20% less time. And so when looking at people's calendars, we saw that about 30% of all the meetings people were attending were useless meetings. And so we decided to cut those kind of meetings. And so it was very important for people to understand why we were doing that. Well, that was because, we did these studies and we understood that it wasn't working. So we did it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, again, thank you. Excellent transition towards prioritizing wellness, which is the second tool that I wanted to talk about that I think has been instrumental in keeping the company happy during this challenging year. If you look at the charts for burnout from last year, 2019, they were pretty bad because it's increasing year over year. So I just cannot imagine what it's going to be in 2020, given all the stress that people are dealing with. And I think burnout is terrible for people that experience it, but it's also terrible for employers. I read a study that shows that employers spend on average $190 billion per year in burnout-related healthcare costs each year. So we want to discuss some of the things that we've both done in our companies to make sure that we prioritize wellness. When COVID started, one of the things that we noticed at front was people were not taking PTO, so they were not going on vacation anymore because, you know, what's the point? You can't go outside of your house. And so what we did was we implemented wellness days. So all the employees have to take the day off at the same time. And what we found is, instead of saying, well, you have to take PTO, the fact that your entire company is off at the same time means that you can really disconnect and recharge, because there is, you know, a very low likelihood that you'll receive an email from anyone at front by then. So wellness days, then we did a survey a few weeks ago and everyone said this is the best thing that front has ever implemented. So I would highly recommend it. Another thing that we've done is, I'm convinced that one of the reasons why people can be unhappy and healthy, like burnout, is because they are kind of always on. And I think our phones play a huge part in this feeling. And so I told you in 2017, one of the things that I did was I deleted all my apps from my phone. So no email app, no Slack, no Dropbox, nothing, no Evernote. And it was scary at first because I was like, I'm going to miss something. And it ended up, being such a relief. And I had so much more clarity and peace in my life, because when I was working, I was working, but when I was not on my computer, there was nothing that could, bring me back to work, except if there is an emergency, in which case, I have a phone and people can call me. And so I would not miss anything. So after I had seen how beneficial it was for me, I challenged my team to the same thing. And so I told them, like, who wants to do this challenge with me? You just, for 2 weeks, you remove your work apps and then you can reinstall them, but maybe you will never reinstall them. And a few people took the challenge, they loved it. And so then we decided to incentivize the entire company. And so we did a challenge where if you spent less than 14 hours a week on your phone, so that's 2 hours a day, then you would get an extra $100 in health and wellness benefit at the end of the month. And so all you had to do was take a screenshot of how much time you spend on your phone, send it to us, and then you can get this credit. And it worked really well. And one of the things that we've, like, right now we re-implemented it because in the US, a new president is about to be elected, which means that the news are extremely noisy. People are constantly checking their phones. And I think there is a level that's healthy and a level that's unhealthy. So we're re-incentivizing everyone to do this. So this is another example. Fitness challenges, same thing. People are in their home, like they're not doing a lot of social activities. So we have these fitness challenges where, for example, some people are biking indoor, outdoor, and we want to make sure that we reach a certain level of miles that together at the company we've been able to bike. That has worked well. And Jeremy, I think one of the things that you mentioned was implementing a 4-day work week. I'm curious why you made that decision and how it's working concretely. And then I'm sure I'll have many more questions.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's talking about wellness, I think the 4-day work week is quite a radical experience. In fact, it's very linked with our mission, because our mission has always been to rethink the experience at work, and we thought at the very beginning that maybe the way we work, the rhythm of work, is something we can challenge. It's also linked with the fact that we think that if you want to build a long-term company, you have to understand how you can motivate people to stay just more than the 2, 3, 4 years that everyone is talking about. How can you make people stay like for 10 and 15 years? And so we were actively thinking about it. Of course, there are a lot of different things to do and to implement, but in the end, we thought that changing the time frame, because in fact nobody really knows why we work 5 days per week. It's like a tradition.
Yeah.
But again, I think traditions can change, and we saw that maybe by testing that we can see if we can, well, maybe not improve productivity because it wasn't the goal, but maybe we can stay on the same level of productivity but increase the personal quality of life of people, and maybe have maybe another positive, external impact. So this is why we started it. In fact, we did a 6-month test last year, and so we tested and we followed every let's say KPIs we wanted to follow. It was quite complicated. First month we lost like 20% of productivity and performance, so quite a complicated beginning. It was a very I challenge you to have this conversation about the 4-day week with your board. It's always a good it's always a good situation, but then we work on that quite hard. We iterated the process. Of course, we improved the way we were handling this new situation, and in fact at the end of the 6-month test, what we saw is that we could achieve the same level of productivity. Again, our goal wasn't to improve it, but to stay at the same level, and that worked. And we saw that there was a clear improvement on the way people see their personal life balance. And maybe just I think we would need like 4 hours to talk about it because it's quite a complicated topic. But what we, for example, saw during the test, and what we actually see right now, is that when you have a better control of your time, which we don't have usually because you're always running to do your job, and then to take care of your kids, and then it's a weekend, so you want to do the things that you didn't do during the week. When you gain a better control of your time, it really improves your self-esteem, and it has a very strong positive impact on your work life and on your personal life. And this is what we achieve with this 4-day work week. Of course, it's quite complicated to implement it in every companies, and also because especially I think on this wellness topic, you have different ways to do it, and the cultural impact also is important. For example, we see that we have an office in Paris, it's our main office, but we have also an office in Barcelona in Spain, we have an office in Prague in Czech Republic, and we see, for example, depending on the cultures of the people, the way they perceive wellness and how they think that the company should embrace this topic is very different. So also each time you have to think, does it resonate to the people you're talking to, and do I have to adapt a bit what I can offer people on this topic? And I think it's quite a complicated
well, yeah, and I agree with you. I think we could spend 4 hours talking about it. Maybe there will be some questions from the audience.
Yeah, I'm talking too much about it, as always.
It's fascinating. I know that we have 5 minutes left before the end of this presentation. Then there will be questions. So let's go through, a few other tools. But Jeremy, you know that there will be an email from me asking you more information about this 4-day week. So. Tool number 3, low ego, create a culture where people are motivated to put the team first. It's one of our values as well. And just so you know, low ego doesn't mean to not have an ego. It just means that you're thinking about the customers, the team first before thinking about you. And the reason why I think it's a tool that has been super helpful is, I'll give you very concrete examples. At the beginning of COVID, when we started seeing the impact of COVID, we started seeing that some teams in the company had more work because of COVID, and some teams had less work. So for example, the finance team had so much work because people were looking for financial relief. And then the recruiting team had less work because we slowed down on hiring because times were so uncertain. And so if you've built a culture of low ego, then it means that having conversations with your team about, can you stop doing the job that you are doing? Can you do another job? Will be so much easier than if you have a high ego culture. Now the question is, what do you do to build this low ego culture? And I'll give you 2 examples, and I'll ask Jeremy for one. One is you have to hire people that are low ego. It seems very obvious, but then the question is, how do you test this? I'll tell you what my favorite question is when I interview people. Let's say I'm interviewing software engineer, and I'm going to ask this question, which is on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being you don't know anything about software engineering, and 10 is the best software engineer you can be in your life based on your potential. Like, where are you on a scale from 0 to 10? And the reason I'm asking this question is because I'm not asking to compare them with other people. All I'm asking them is how much more potential. Like, can they be 20% better? Can they be 3 times better? And what I found is that people that are low ego and self-confident will give a very low number. And people that are high ego and lack confidence will give a very high number. And in startups, I think you really want to have people that are low ego and high confidence. So that's one thing. The second thing is making it clear to your employees that it's fine to do mistakes. And one thing we've implemented, I told you we have all hands every week, and part of the all hands is stumble of the week. So someone will be able to share one thing they've done that they made a mistake on. It's a stumble. And by telling the team, well, I made this mistake, this is what I learned, you make it okay to make mistakes, which I think is very powerful. And Jeremy, I think that so Jeremy, do you have one example that you do to implement a low ego culture at
Sure. Well, I completely agree with what you're saying, especially in times when people can shift focus and can change jobs within the same company is very important. Maybe it's not a revolutionary tip, but I think it's working quite well, at least for us. We see that a low ego is always synonymous of knowing better what other people are doing. Yeah. Especially when you have a company where everybody is doing quite different jobs. It is the case within our company. So what we implemented, I think, in the early days of Welcome Jungle is that everybody is having a very long onboarding process, a bit more than a month. And during that time, everybody has to do the jobs of everyone. So if I take your example again, you're a software engineer. All right, so you're going to do what you're asked to do in the end, but you will take time to, you will take time with a journalist, with our media team to understand what it is about to write an article. And you will see that it's not that easy. You will take time with our business team, our sales team, our onboarding team, our account management team, and so on. And it is very interesting because in the end, when you understand how people are working, you have a less tendency, to underestimate them, to think that your job is better than the other guy's job. And especially in difficult moments, you can measure the impact, for example, of the crisis on everybody's job. And you can also understand better how you can help and also how people can help you.
Yeah, love it. I love it. And we do that too at Front, and I think it's amazing. All right, last tip for everyone, which is focus on impact that Jeremy already talked about. I will switch to what we do at Front and what does it mean. As Jeremy said, I think understanding why you're working is going to be so important in times like this, always important, but so important in times like this. And so knowing the mission of your company is something that is going to be impactful. So repeat as a leader, you have to repeat your mission all the time. I've heard something from a founder one day who told me, if your team is not complaining about the fact that they are hearing about your mission too much, then it means that you're not sharing it enough. And I thought that it was a very good thing to share. I think obviously you have to, illustrate it. You can't just say at every all hands, oh, here is our mission. But, for example, we at the end of every quarter, we have something called Last Quarter at Front. We just did it for the last quarter. And we gave this example of a customer. The customer is called Better. It's a mortgage company. And we explained very concretely how Front helped them be 1,200% more efficient and what impact it had on making homeownership more accessible to more American. And our mission is make mission more possible. So then people understand, okay, well, I know what our mission is, and I understand how we're having this impact on our customers. So that's one thing, repeat your mission over and over and illustrate it. Number two is recognize people for their impact. So I told you we have Stumble of the Week. during all hands, we'll also have Frontier of the Week, where people are nominated. Someone gets an award every week, and they're recognized for the impact they have either on customers or on their teammates. And show, don't tell people how they're making a difference. Obviously, this is the moment I'm super biased, because we make a tool that makes customer interactions more accessible within your company. And so you can see, every customer interaction, every person that says something on Twitter, every NPS feedback that's being sent. And I think there is no moment that's more relevant and meaningful for an employee than when they see firsthand their customers say good things and bad things about the service that you're providing. So do you have one example, Jeremy? And then we'll wrap up and take, I saw a few questions.
Sure. Well, just in 1 minute, maybe something that really is important for me. I think also impact is about coherence. Clearly, the last thing you were there, practice what you preach, is very important. You need to be coherent. What you said externally has to resonate with what you do internally, especially for us. Again, our mission is to reinvent the experience at work. So this coherence is very important. And for example, within the Welcome Triangle team, there is a very strong sense of social and environmental responsibility. It really resonates with a lot of people there. And so a few months ago, we decided to go a bit deeper, and we engaged with a fraction of our team, to obtain the B Corp label, which is a US label on this kind of topic. Very, very important and very difficult to obtain, and we obtained it last September. So I think it's a good way also to see what teams really value and how to make it understandable for everyone. And how, maybe it's not a question only of labels, of course, but how you can write it down and say, well, we have this kind of convictions. It's written in stone in a way. This is also what I like about B Corp, is that you write really in the corporate documents what the mission is and so on. And so I think it gives a sense of long-term purpose for everyone.
Love it. Well, this is the conclusion. So I truly hope that we're not going to face any other pandemic in our lifetimes, but even if we don't, I hope that the tools that we talked about will be beneficial to your companies. And if you just joined, which would be a bummer, but then maybe that happens, I'll do a quick summary, which is one, always give visibility to your team about how your business is doing and how your team is performing. It will be the trust. And in these uncertain times, this is more important than ever. Number two is a team that takes care of their bodies and minds is a team that's less likely to burn out, take sick days or leave the company. So invest in wellness. A team that puts the company first versus them first is way more likely to be flexible when the business needs them to shift priorities. And a team that is encouraged to focus on why they're working on what they're working, and not just how many hours they put into it, is a team that will be more engaged, and companies will perform better. So I will stop sharing my screen so that I can look at the questions that are being asked, but there are so many.
Maybe, Mathilde, I can ask you the question for the person. There was a question about the transparency issue. How do you handle the fact that sometimes you have very confidential information, for example, in your board deck or in other places? How can you make that as transparent as possible? And how does it work also with external people? I think I combine two questions.
Yes. Well, so the first thing is, I'll start with the external people. So if you look at my Twitter or my Medium, you will see that I share a lot of things. I share our board. I don't share our board decks, but I share every time we raise money. I publish our series, seed series, a series B series.
Yeah, I read it.
Great. We publish our roadmap publicly. So a lot of things are shared. And I think the reason I do it is because I think it can be helpful to people, but also people then trust us as a company that we're a transparent company, because it's not just internally, but also externally. So I think sharing externally is something that I found being really, really successful and helpful to people. Internally, I think the only way, so the answer is yes. Obviously, if in your board deck you're seeing, well, we're gonna part ways with whatever, this person, or you don't want to share this. But that's why it's so important when people join the company that we explain what transparency is about. And that's why everyone has this session where we explain our values and we tell them about good and bad transparency. And we give very concrete examples. Very concrete example was, many years ago, we parted ways with one of our first employees, and all hands, I tell the team, well, we've parted ways with this person, wish him luck in his next adventure. And then the company said to me, you're not transparent, you didn't tell us what happened. And then I tell them, well, but the privacy of individuals is more important than the transparency of the company, which is very obvious. But if you set it from the moment they join, then they will understand that, yes, maybe one slide or one note has been removed from your board deck, but they have to trust you that we've done that because we wanted to respect the privacy of the individuals. But it should be very little. The only thing is it shouldn't be zero, but you build enough trust that they will trust you.
Sure.
I hope that's helpful.
Good answer.
Yeah, great. Do you have other questions, Jeremy?
I'm reading them as I talk. I think there are also some questions about, cultural barriers. For example, you talked about radical candor feedbacks. How do you make that work? When, for example, maybe it works for an American person, maybe it works less with a French one, or I know Spanish one, or
I don't know.
Or is it just cliches?
No, I think it's just cliche, because I think, if anything, I'm French, and I think it's like French people are more direct. And so then it's easier to say things very directly, but I don't know, it's hard. I'm a French person who started this company in France, then moved to the US. I'll give you just one thing that you can do to make sure that it works. So I shared one tip before, another tip, and then I'll have a question for you, Jeremy. But one thing that we do is we train people on radical candor. Just if you want to train yourself, just read the book Radical Candor. It's brilliant. But we explain what radical candor is about and to our new employees. And then what we tell them is, okay, you just joined the company. You've necessarily had experiences with people in the company. So you have two papers. One, you can share something great that someone did and something that you wish someone had done better, and then just give the paper to the person. And so, okay, you just joined front, and now you have to give feedback, good and less good, to someone. Yeah. And again, like, it's really just a muscle that you need to train. And so as a leader, anything you can do to train people. Another thing that is very helpful is the way you do one-on-ones. And I won't go into this topic, but it's probably the one I'm the most passionate about in terms of culture. And I wrote a full article about how we do one-on-ones, but making sure that you ask questions. What have you been most happy about, least happy about in the past month? And people have to tell you. Then you have this level of conversation that then make it easier to give feedback, good and bad.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. We do a bit the same, in I want the same in name. The name is very French, but if we have to translate it, it will be we do astonishment reports, and in fact, every month people need to tell us how they would look at the company if they were just newcomers, to help people think a bit like an external person, so that you still see the problems, and you're not, because when you're in the company, in the end, you don't really see the real ones, and it's quite interesting. Difficult to do, but interesting.
I agree. It's super hard to do, but if you do it right, the benefit is huge. All right, we're at the end of our time. I could have asked a million more questions and answered a million more questions, but thanks everyone for listening to this. So thanks, Jeremy, for joining me. I thought it was fascinating to hear more about Welcome to the Jungle. I hope everyone enjoyed it. and good luck with everything that's going on in the world. And hopefully you yourself and your company will be a bit better with the advice we shared.
Thank you.